And we're back live with the Midland boys, I guess. Got my boy
The Midland Mafia.
Midland Mafia, the Midland Mafia.
It's the real COM, City of Midland.
Yeah. Shots fired 20 seconds into the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. So we've got my homie, Collin McLelland. Collin, thank you so much for stepping in as the guest co-host. As people know at this point on What the Funk, we have different rotating co-hosts, and then we have a different guest that we like to feature every week. So Collin stepping in this week for a couple reasons. One, he and Andy, both Midland guys. Andrew De La Rosa is our guest. And also, I think you guys worked together at some point, like in the field, right? That was when you were earlier on in your career, Collin?
Yeah, I think 2012 we started working together. I think 2012 to 2013. Me and Andy ran around the oil field. We were just some little worms back then, running wireline.
Nice. When you were 7 years old, the youngest man ever on a rig.
That's right. I think Andy, when did you start running wireline?
It was September 2011. Started over at Superior Wireline Services before they became neighbors.
Yeah.
Worked there.
Was that the same Superior from Superior Frac?
Yeah, their frac was. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but pretty terrible. At least
whenever we were running with them. Superior Frac was hands down the worst frac fleet out in West Texas during that time. I remember seeing one of their they burned one of their pumps down to the ground on location.
And it's funny that you say that because one of the first fracs I ever went on, we had to run off location because 3 pump trucks had caught on fire. I remember I stopped running and my manager during time, he just passed me, like, man, keep running. And I was like, oh, crap, how far do I got to keep going? But, I was, like Collin said, I was pretty wormy back then, so I didn't really understand the dangers of it.
Yeah, the one time I saw a pump burn down to the ground, it was that time at Superior. And what essentially happened was a hydraulic hose busted and then started spraying the turbo. And so you just had this huge fire. And the Superior hand runs over with like a little fire extinguisher and puts the fire out. And afterwards, the company man's like, hey, it's like, I really appreciate that bravery, but I better never see you do that shit again.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. Yeah. So this is fun already. I'm a back office guy for the most part. I was telling Andy some of my background, which Collin, you already know, like New England guy, randomly ended up in oil and gas tech in 2007. And I've really enjoyed my 15 plus years in the industry. But one thing I haven't done is spend a lot of time in the field. So you guys are already throwing around, what the hell is that? Terms and acronyms and things like that. So let's start with the basics. Andy, what is wireline? For people that aren't familiar, like I hear this term a lot, but explain to the listeners that may not know the field and oil and gas terminology as well. What's wireline?
All right. So wireline is just it's a big reel of conductive cable that's set on the back of a truck. There's a command center, which we call the shooter's cab. And you run the wire into the oil and gas wells. You can run all different types of tools, perforating guns, logging tools, casing caliper inspections. It's been around for a little bit over 100 years. Schlumberger started off with it. Some of the first wireline tools they were running were logging tools, just to get properties of the wellbore, exactly what's behind this casing, this wall, this cement, stuff like that. It's just oil and gas exploration, just to be able to run various tools and stuff off that conductive cable.
Yeah. And how far down does the wire line go?
It varies. Like we just got a brand new drum. It has 35,000 feet of wire line, which, we're not going to go that deep. Some of the wells that we're going into, they're horizontal wells. So they're true, like they'll be maybe like 22,000 feet deep, but that's not true vertical depth. Like true vertical depth, which means it's just, straight up and down. What's the accurate length of it? Maybe about 9,000, 10,000 feet, but they'll go down, they'll kick off, they'll go horizontal for maybe about 3 more miles laterally.
Jeremy, if you've ever seen Andy's pictures that he always takes from the cab, the inside of the truck, you have these giant trucks or semi trucks, and they have a big shooter's cab inside. And so you walk into these shooter's cabs and you've got your control panel, and that's Andy's job. He's the engineer, and he sits there and he controls the spool, and then you got a whole rack of computers. And Andy, you'll appreciate this. The first wireline truck I ever saw in 2010 was out on a drilling rig, and it was this guy in a pickup truck, and he ran a spool out of the bed of his pickup truck, and then like had like the back seat essentially like cut out in his pickup truck to like where you could look out the window. And so that was my understanding of wireline. And then the next time we did pipe recovery, Halliburton brought out a full size logger. I'm like, dude, what the hell is this thing? It looks like a spaceship. And so I always think about that, how like my first experience of wireline was just some dude in a pickup truck. And these trucks are pretty advanced. And Andy, tell us about like what is the makeup of a wireline crew and what is your position?
Well, it varies on what kind of operation is going to be running. Like the stuff that we're doing right now, it's all completion work, which is on we're fracking a bunch of horizontal wells, and typically these crews, it's so you'll have one truck and they run a shift work, usually about 12 hours per shift. It's 24-hour operation, so you'll have your day crew and your night crew. Each crew will have at least 2 to 3 people on the ground, which you call your operators, and they'll be there with by experience. You'll have your bottom of your totem pole, which is basically your worm, your junior operator. Then you have a middle guy, and then you have your lead operator, which kind of just runs operations on the ground while you're inside of the truck running it. So the leader of the whole entire crew is going to be your wireline engineer, which the title is we're not really engineers. In reality, we're just wireline supervisors. So that's really what it consists of. So you have your wireline supervisor, your lead operator, your middleman, and your third guy. But some companies like us, we actually, we don't. The workforce is hurting on the labor side, so we've had to minimize our crews down to only just 2 operators on the ground, and then me inside the truck running, which requires me to start handling a lot more workload than what I'm already used to from just running the truck, just to be able to help out my guys. There's a lot of engineers out there. They won't even get out of the truck. They'll be just sitting there a whole entire time watching their guys from the window bust their butt out there and stuff.
You and I worked with some guys like that, right? We used to be the 2 guys out there on the ground doing all the grunt work. And let's talk about the labor shortage here in a little bit. That'll be pretty interesting to hear from your perspective, boots on the ground. But first, before we do that, it sounds like you're doing a lot of perforation work on frac jobs. And so wireline is a critical component of the fracking process. Why don't you tell us real quick, and anyone listening, what role wireline plays in perforation and setting a plug and perforating?
So with the when you're running hydraulic fracturing, which I don't think a lot of people really realize this, people, especially outside of the industry, they think that okay, there's a hole in the ground, then a bunch of trucks come in and they frack it and they get oil and gas. Well, they're leaving out key components out of that whole entire process, which is wireline. You can't just go to a well and expect it to just frack, especially if there's casing. All that's going to happen is that well is going to pressure up. You're not going to have nowhere for that fluid to be able to travel, for that sand to be able to travel, all that stuff like that. So what wireline does is they go in with their perforating guns, and usually what they'll do is once, so let's say that it's the very first wireline run on it, which normally you call that the tow stage. It's the very first perforating gun gets sent down hole with the plug. The way that they're able to pump it down is they'll have something like a wet shoe or a hydraulic sleeve on the very bottom. So pump down pumps will come in and they'll start to pressure up on the well. Well, once it gets to a certain pressure, that wet shoe on the bottom or the hydraulic sleeve is going to open up, and it's going to allow for fluid to travel into formation. So with that, you have fluid displacement. You're able to pump tools into the well. So you pump down the first stage, you set the plug. That zone, right, that area behind that plug is isolated. So you come up, and some companies, they may pressure test the plug, especially if it's ball in place like that. Come up and you'll start firing your perforating guns while they're moving, which they call shooting on the fly. Those holes right there, they connect your casing to your reservoir. So with that, so they have all those perforations in there. Those perforations go in and they create small fractures. So wireline retrieves their tools out of the hole. They start pumping with the hydraulic fracturing. You have your water, your sand like that, and all that's being pushed until those perforations opening up those fractures. It's literally, that's what it is, just a hairline fracture. That's what they got the term from, hydraulic fracturing.
I got a
Man,
They
question for you
push.
on these wet shoes because I don't think I've seen these personally. And back when we did horizontals, we would do the toe prep with like TCP
Yeah.
guns and coiled tubing. And so, how do these wet shoes work now? I mean, is this installed in the casing, in the production casing, and then you got a sleeve that you're able to activate? How does that actually work?
Yeah, it'll be on the I guess the very I don't know what you call it. It wouldn't be the end, but I guess the very first sleeve that's your rundown hole. I don't know the correct terminology because I'm not on the drilling side and all that.
Yeah,
But what I do
yeah.
know is just it's cement with a mixture of could be different types of chemicals and everything. And what those additives do is it doesn't allow the cement to solidify. So once they pump that pressure, or they're pumping the fluid, the pressure starts to build up so much that it literally just washes it away into formation. So you're able to get fluid back there. And the stuff with
Yeah.
hydraulic sleeves, it's kind of the same thing. It's just the sleeve will open up when it gets to a certain pressure.
Y'all wanna hear a funny story? I don't know if you got to do this, but you're just talking about retarding cement and keeping it from setting. Did you ever have to dump cement with a cement baler back in the day
All the
and like
time.
mix cement on? So
Yeah.
Jeremy, you want to hear like how poor boy this is? Is like we used to run like we would run like we'd run a plug down the hole and set the plug, and then we'd dump cement on top of that plug. So you have this tool, it's called a cement baler, and all it is like a pipe that you fill cement with, and it has a piece of glass on the bottom, and you explode that piece of glass and the cement falls out. And we'd get a 55-gallon barrel drum and plastic drum, and we'd cut it in half, and then we'd mix like a few bags of cement in there, water, mix it. And then this old hand that I used to work with, his name was Monty. He'd have us pour Coca-Cola into the cement
oh my
to, he's like, yeah, this is retarded to keep it from flash setting. And so I just always laugh that we were like dumping the cement. There was like no scientific process. It's just like, oh yeah, looks thick enough, put some Coca-Cola in
You've got
That's
to
pretty much it. I mean, you'd be mixing the cement right there next to the workover rig with some freaking shovels. If you're lucky, you had a kid
yeah.
with a little cement paddle.
Yeah, no, dude, the cement paddles, like I remember when we finally got one of those, but it was always just like sitting there mixing it with a shovel.
oh
And
my
then I
god.
remember finally we got like a paddle with a drill, and I'm like, oh shit, we're fancy now.
Oh yeah.
You've got a multi-billion-dollar industry with multi-million-dollar fracks, and you've got a bunch of dudes mixing cement and putting cans of Coca-Cola in it, dumping it
yeah.
20,000 feet into the ground. I
Yeah,
Yeah.
love
that
it.
was you had asked me earlier about like what like wireline consists of, and that was another thing I forgot of. I mean, like with the hydraulic fracturing and everything, that's your completion work, but then stuff that Colin's talking about right there, that's more like on the production side.
Okay.
The whole thing behind that cement is just to be a secondary boundary whenever you set a plug and stuff.
Yeah, the thing with wireline that's really interesting about wireline is it's probably the most versatile tool used in the oil and gas industry because it can be used in open hole, cased hole, it can be used in completions and drilling and production. And so, the type of work that Andy's doing out there right now, stage work is like really popular. But like Andy, when I moved down to South Texas and I was like working in old conventional fields, like all we did was through tubing work, and it was just like little. I mean, $3,000 to $10,000 jobs, and you learn a lot because you
Yeah.
see a lot of different stuff. But yeah, it was just like really interesting doing some of that type of stuff. And pipe recovery is super complex and takes a ton of knowledge. So yeah, wireline is just a really interesting application and tool, and seeing how it's used in pretty much all facets of oil and gas wells.
This is really entertaining and informative stuff. So when I hear people say like, we just lost $1 million worth of tools downhole, does the wireline, is that what pulls those tools out effectively? Like, is that part of what you do as well, or is it more the process of going down versus pulling things out?
Well, it depends on like what tools you're running and when did you lose the tools, because you can lose tools like on a drilling rig, on a workover rig, and then like during the fracks like, okay, we lost tools down hole. With stuff like on drilling rigs, that's that could be like drill string that you lost down hole. But like normally, like with wireline, okay, I lost tools 9 times out of 10 it's going to be it's going to be on a frack, and it's going to be a perforating gun, whether
Yep.
someone accidentally shut the well or they got pumped off, or just it could be different types of things just to be able to be severed from the cable itself. to be, most times when they're retrieving it, um, the fastest way that I've seen recently is running braided line, which is another form of wire line. It's not conductive cable. It's thickness. It's a lot. It's bigger, and the purpose of that is just to have the strength to be able to put to jar these tools out of if they're wedged in the casing or if it's stuck on a plug or whatever.
Yeah, Jeremy, to add on, like your wireline, he was just talking about wireline being conductive. Essentially, it's a steel braided line, and in the middle of it, you have conductive line. That way, you can shoot electricity all the way
Mm.
down a well, and so you don't really
Yeah.
have much tensile strength. Like Andy, what's max that you can pull on your typical line and wire line? I mean, it's not
So,
much.
well, the stuff that I run, it's your conventional cable, which is steel line right there, and the size of it is 9/32. I say that's like the outer diameter, that's the thickness of it.
Yep.
So with that, like the breaking strength to where the wire line itself would just snap like it's around 10,000 pounds. But then you have something that's called at the very end of the whip end of the wire line, you have a cable head, which you got to tie these armors back and run it through this type of brass that we call a bell, and that's called reheading through the cable heads. That right there, depending on the depth, depending on the weight of the tools, it has a weak point to where it disconnects from the cable head and you leave the tools out. Like I said, it all just depends. It could be a vertical well or a horizontal well. From there, there's actual calculations that you got to do there's a breaking strength for each individual armor. You multiply and all that stuff, and it's going to give you like, I don't know, maybe like 5,000, 4,000 pounds. And once you get to that point, you're gonna pull out a rope socket.
Yeah, I think one thing a lot of people don't appreciate outside the industry is how much math and engineering
Yeah.
people like you use out in the field, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people probably think that we're just a bunch of dumb field hands, but there's a lot of mathematics and engineering that go into it. And Andy, you know this. I mean, when you lose tools on wireline, you have to use a lot of critical thinking to think through. Like if you get a rat nest up and you start getting a rat nest, or
Yeah.
what's the term called when one of your lines
High
uh,
strand.
yeah, yeah, high strand. So you run into problems like that, and I mean, you have to use some pretty serious critical thinking skills, and that's why people like you make the big bucks, because you get in a situation like that, and you have the experience to know how to get out of it. So, how long did it take you to get up from operator, from being the one turning a wrench, working the ground, to being able to fully run a wireline truck?
So I was on the ground as an operator for about 2.5 years, and during that time, like I'd say for maybe like 6 or 8 months, I was your junior operator, and I had another operator above me. Around the time that we met, I was a lead operator during that time. So you took off from Pioneer, and I can't remember how much longer I was on the ground for, but I started training. And I trained for probably about 4 or 6 months with a senior wireline engineer. He just kind of guided me, showed me everything his way and stuff like that. Went to school with Pioneer Wireline Services. It was supposed to be a month long, but during this time, I mean, the barrel was $100. So I was there for 2 weeks. My boss, I came
Let's
back home
go.
for a little bit, and my boss was like, "Hey, we can send you
That's
back."
typical oil field.
Right? You know enough. Get out there.
Yeah, pretty much it. I mean, you could train. I don't know, for like I said, I trained for about 4 or 6 months. I could have trained for a year. I still wouldn't have been ready. And that's what I tell some of the guys that are just breaking out. Now, that's what you call when you go from being an operator to being the wireline supervisor. You call it breaking out. I tell them now, I was like, you're not going to be ready. You're never going to be ready. I was like, I wasn't ready. It's just something that you learn as years go on. You have trial and error, and you learn from people's mistakes and your own mistakes.
Yeah, no, that's super important. Everyone always wants to wait until they're ready, and you just like, there's never a right time,
No,
right?
you're never ready.
Yeah, you're never,
You
you're
know,
never
and
ready.
that I can equate that too. And Colin, both of us, I guess all of us are entrepreneurs, right? We've got our businesses, and like the amount of things that I've made mistakes on have just made me realize I'm never really going to know everything, right? I'll just continue to sort of make mistakes and learn as I evolve through the process, right? There's
Yeah,
less risk with what I'm doing, with what you're doing, than, a very expensive wireline job downhole. But nonetheless,
yeah,
it's sort of a life lesson, right? Whether you're in the field, you're in the back office, you're running a business, like
yeah.
just accepting you're never going to know.
Andy has a lot more fun because his fuck ups are like that walk of shame over to the company man to tell
Yeah.
them that you just lost his tools.
Oh man, I've had. I mean, every doesn't matter how good you are. Every engineer messes up, and I have some pretty good ones. It's crazy. My
Oh
boss
yeah.
just texted me. So right now, we're doing some toe preps, like I was talking about earlier, for one of our customers, the first stage, and we are the deepest that we've ever been as a company, and they're
Wow.
shooting this gun at 25,000, 15 feet in the lateral.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Oof.
that's here in West Texas.
Yeah, that's Andy, talk about what's changed since me and you ran
Exactly.
Wireline together back in 2012, 2013 timeframe. I know a lot's changed, and one, how much work has to be done for some of these operators because those guns come out, man, they're
Oh,
spoiled, man. The guns come out. So Jeremy, me and Andy used to have to build all of our guns. And so they'd come in like, different sizes, but like 3 to 5 foot barrels, and
Yeah.
you'd have to wire them, get your subs on, wrench them together, and then test them. And the worst is like you build all these guns, put them together, you spend an hour sending them down a hole, and then you have a short, and the guns don't go off, and so then you get your ass chewed out. I know today that a lot of guns are pre-built for these guys coming out.
Sure.
What other major changes have you seen, Andy, in terms of technology and just anything else that's changed over the years?
dude, in just a short amount of time from whenever me and you work together, and it's less than 10 years from last time me and you were in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like leaps and bounds. So you, for example, like you're talking about, you have the gun perforating systems, which what me and Colin shot back then in the day, they're pretty much almost 100% phased out, except for more in the conventional work. And those were for your vertical fracs, was just your wells that are up, just straight vertical. Um, those guns were called EB pressure activated guns, and it's like you said, you'd have to wire them up each one by one. You go down a hole, and let's say you're able to set the plug successfully, but then you come up to try to shoot the gun, and you have a misrun. None of those guns are going to shoot, or it could be this, vice versa. If you go down, try to set the plug, it doesn't set. Well, none of that gun's going to shoot. So now you have that long ass. I guess almost like a walk of shame where you're having to bring the tools back out of hole. You can't bring it back out of hole at the same speed, because if that plug's still there, if you come out hauling ass, you can get hung up and then rip out a rope socket. So you're
Yeah.
just
So the walk of shame is you're holding up this multi-million-dollar job. You got frac crew pissed off at you, water
yeah,
transfer pissed off at you, the EMP pissed off at you,
Right.
and because your tool didn't work like it was supposed to. And there's all kinds of reasons,
yeah.
what could have happened, but it's always the operator's fault.
So like now, with the perforating gun systems, you have a lot of them which are 100% disposable. And by that, it means like once you perforate the gun, you just throw it to the trash can. Like whenever me and Colin would do it, when the gun came out of the hole, the only thing that we'd throw to the trash is just the barrel itself. You'd have these things where you'd have all the wiring and like another explosive, and we call them subs. And there'd be each individual one. Some guns could have no subs at all, or maybe just two subs, like your head sub and your bottom one, because it's just one single gun. But then you could have clusters of guns that are anywhere from like back in the day when me and Colin are doing like maybe like 5, 7 guns. Now you have some that are, I've heard is some operators doing as much as 30 guns per string.
Whoa.
But at the same
Wait,
time, they don't.
Andy, are you telling me that these guys don't have to clean subs anymore?
There is, yes. There's this dude. There's 100% disposal. Okay, so Pintail Wireline, they shoot 100% disposable. Whenever they come out of the hole, the guns perforating everything. The setting tool, trash. The guns, trash. The only thing they keep is the freaking CCL, dude. There's no redress the setting tool. There's no cleaning the subs or anything like that. Even some of them, dude, the guns already have the detonator in them. All they got to do is just pull like an interrupter out of it. With us, the perforating system we use, we clean our subs, but they're 1,000 times easier than whenever we were connecting. So there's very little wiring now these days. Um,
Yeah.
with
We
trucks,
wouldn't we wouldn't have believed that back in the day,
oh
man.
yeah,
I
dude.
mean, just think about how much like physical manual work there is, and putting guns together, wiring them together. Then you get them out. You have to break them down. You have to clean up, take off your O-rings, clean off the subs. I mean, redress a setting tool. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah,
of work there to do.
it
And
was the vertical days were way harder than what they are today. Like
Huh.
operators these days are 100% spoiled, and this is this is what I believe. If you're a wireline operator, and I'm not trying to knock anyone down just starting an industry, because by all means we need as many people into the industry as we can, but
Yep.
coming into wireline now, just starting off, you're not like nowhere near the knowledge or the skill set as what the operators were back in the day. Whenever I first started, or whenever Colin was doing it,
Just
and that's not
because
their
Yeah.
fault. That's just advancement in technology.
it makes sense. Yeah. Well, so I want to take a step back here a little bit. Um, so Andy, man, you first of all, you could teach a class on this. Like this is pretty impressive stuff. But how did you get into this? Like, give me your background a little bit. Did you grow up in West Texas and sort of always saw the oil field around you and realized it was a good opportunity to make money? Or were you always interested sort of in the science and the engineering? Like, how did you build this as a career and what was your upbringing like?
So I graduated from Lee High School in 2006, and as soon as I graduated, I started working with the independent school district for like 3.5 years. So that's where I got my CDL at.
Okay.
From there, I transitioned to construction. I worked for a mom and pop company called Midwest Glass, which is just commercial and was it residential installation of glass doors, stuff like that. So the guy that I was under, he took off and he became a packer hand, which those are downhole isolation tools in the oil field. And I don't know, I was just kind of getting burned out. And like I said, the oil field's always been, it was always around me, but I didn't want to work in it. Like that was just, I was like, oh, I remember telling myself, I'm never going to work in the oil field, blah, blah, blah. So he had been gone for a little bit, and I guess I was getting burned out. And I told him, I was like, dude, I want to do something else. Like, I'm just burned out here. He's like, man, you ever heard of Wireline? I'm like, no. It's like, oh, it's easy, man. All you're gonna do is just drive a truck. I was like, shoot, man, I can do that. I haven't used my CDL in like 2 years, but I can still drive. So he told me to go look for this place, which it was called Wood Group Wireline. And little did I know that during the time they got sold out and became GE Wireline. So I'm there driving up and down Business 20 on the frontage road looking for
Yep.
this, Wood Group Wireline. Little I know I'm passing it the whole entire time. It's just called GE. So I turn down the street and I see this place called Gray Wireline. So I get off, go to open the door. It's locked. I was like, all right, whatever. Right next door to me is another wireline shop called Superior. I walk in and the manager saw me and so I was like, hey, man, I'm interested in applying. He asked me if I had any experience. I told him no, I'm willing to learn. He's like, well, you have your CDL? I'm like, yes, sir. It's like, oh, shoot, man, you already got half the battle won. Back then there was this like the barrel's $100. Everyone was trying to find, drivers and all that, but just not a lot of people had their CDLs. It's even worse today. It's way easier to get your CDL back then than what it is today. So
You said it was way easier back then?
to get your CDL, big time, dude. Like now to get your CDL, Texas just implemented a new law that just passed, I think last April, I believe, somewhere right at the beginning of 2022. And you have to take these courses before you can actually go to, I guess, and start, taking the test to get your CDL. Because back then it was just, you took I think 4 or 5 computer tests and then you actually drove. Now you have to take I don't know how long the course is, but you have to do that. Then you can go and start taking those classes. Then you have to go and, take your test to pass. And the driving test now, you pretty much have to be I guess an amateur mechanic to be able to, do it. Cause there's been such a high influx of wrecks, especially here in Midland, Odessa, that I think that, they started passing all these laws to make sure that we don't have all these, amateur drivers and stuff like that on the
But
road.
it was already pretty tough back in the day. I failed the first time.
I failed the general knowledge test every single time until I actually studied. When I studied, then I passed.
I failed the general knowledge, and then I failed my first driving test too. I was like, damn, I don't know shit about driving a truck.
Dude. So when I took my CDL, I took it on an automatic, and now if you take it on an automatic, that's all you're allowed to drive. So you have to go and
Wow.
take it on a manual. At least here in Texas, those are the rules. I don't know when
Yeah.
it comes to other states and stuff.
And for people listening who haven't been to Midland, Texas, it's some of the scariest, craziest driving out there that you've ever seen, right? So you really do or should have a high bar for getting a CDL just because of how insane the roads are out there. I mean, you hear about accidents and sadly people dying all the time. But I mean, you're talking about big, heavy equipment going down roads at 100 miles an hour. It's
Yeah.
scary, man. That really took me by storm the first time I was out there. Like, wow,
Yeah,
this is
it's
crazy
like
driving.
Mad Max and the Thunderdome, you're on these 2-lane roads, and you're just zooming past semi trucks. And what Andy was saying is a lot, especially the sand haulers and water haulers are notorious for just being, kind of balls to the wall and super dangerous. So I'm glad that, standards for driving are being increased a bit because you're driving a 50,000-pound truck, you should know what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
For real. For real.
So Andy, let's talk about what you've been doing on the content side over the last, I don't know, 2 years or
Yeah,
so. I think it's super important work because, you know, our company, Digital Wildcatters, our mission is to change the way the world thinks about energy. And
Yeah.
part of that is raising energy IQ among society because so many people don't understand the energy industry, which is easy to be upset about. But also, if you put ourselves in their shoes, if you grew up in New York City,
Yep.
why would you know anything about energy? Like, you've never had a medium to learn about it.
Yep.
You don't know anyone that works in energy. If like guys like us that grew up in Midland with the oil field right there in our backyard, it was easy for us to be connected to it. And so now with social media, we have the ability to create content and show people. And you've been able to build up a nice little following on Twitter and
Yeah.
tell your story and uh, you know, talk about like what drove you to start doing that, and just kind of talk about that journey and process.
man. What really made it take off for me was just the engagement that I had from it. I would
Yeah.
have never guessed in a million years that oil and gas would be this popular, especially on Twitter. I mean, the whole reason I even made it was to keep up with the MMA and like a lot of bands that I like to pay attention to. So I had it for. So I think I started really getting involved in EFT just like right after, I guess, kind of post COVID in 2020. And the first person that I followed off to the community, which people aren't familiar with it, there's this big following on Twitter, which is oil and gas professionals from every single sector, whether it's guys in the fields or on the finance side, called EFT, which is short for Energy Finance Twitter. It's just another subset of financial Twitter. So I found Collin. He's the very first person I ever started following on EFT, and I
Fraxa.
saw him. Yeah, Frax. I was like, oh man, it's Collin. Hey man, we worked together. We went to high school together. We grew up in Midland, Texas together. Blah blah. Blah. Started following him, and I started noticing a pattern that if I would post something that was oil and gas related, especially, from Wireline, like Collin would retweet it and it would get a lot of engagement. I was like, what the heck? And this is back when I had like, I think like maybe like if I was lucky, maybe 100 people were following me during that time or whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. Then I started getting a lot of follows. Started noticing, that all these people that were following me, like they weren't really who they were. Like some of them just had like all these cartoon pictures on there. I was like, okay,
Anons.
these are anons, and I started really, okay, that's a freaking anon, whatever. So I made a video one day, and I was explaining this third party power pack that we use on our trucks during the long fracs and stuff. Put it out there, and it got a crap load of engagement. I started getting a bunch of DMs and stuff, and I was like, what the heck? People telling me, man, you should make a YouTube channel, this and that, blah blah. Start posting more stuff. So started posting videos just explaining wireline tools, and it caught me by surprise how many people were really interested in stuff, and a lot of them, I guess the highest engagement came were from people that were the oil and gas industry, but they were on the finance side, or they just worked,
Exactly.
just in the offices and all that, and they might have seen the terms wireline. I'm sure they heard. I mean, everyone knows what fracking is, even if you're not in oil and gas. So they're finally, okay, this is what's going on a frac. This is why this is happening on a frac. And I was, just explaining like simple things like logging tools or CCLs or perforating guns or the wireline truck, and it took off from there. It's,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
it's you made a interesting comment about how you were surprised that people were interested in that type of stuff, and it's easy when wireline. Wireline like the back of your hand, like you could run it with your eyes
Yeah.
closed, and you don't get excited about a Baker 20 setting till you've been dealing with them for over 10 years,
Oh yeah, man.
but it's like you get in your own little bubble and you don't realize that, hey, like actually I do some really interesting shit and people outside have interest in what we're doing. And I remember Bill Bailey coming up to me. Bill Bailey's a great finance guy in oil and gas, and I remember him coming up to me, I think in 2021 at some event, and he's like, man, Tejano Brown, like what he's doing, like showing us stuff out in the field, like he's like, that's so
Yeah.
cool. He's like, I've never got to like see it. He's always been so far disconnected. Like these guys, finance oil and gas, but they don't actually get to see where the rubber meets the road. And so, that was what's pretty cool about Twitter, was like bringing different perspective and education and having like these collisions of people meeting. And so, yeah, and I think that's like super important work. Like, yeah, it's cool to get, followers and likes, but it's more important to like actually educate people and show like, hey, this is complex shit that we
Yeah.
do in the energy industry with really smart people doing it. And, I think a lot of people in the world think that electricity just comes out of the wall, and they think that you
It
just like
doesn't?
think that you just stick a straw in the ground and oil just shooting out. They don't understand the physics that go into this and just the
Yeah.
amount of engineering. And so giving people that firsthand look, like, hey, boots on the ground, cell phone video, here's what
Yeah.
we're doing. We're reheading, or we're sending guns down hole. I
Yep.
mean, that's super important
Yeah.
work.
13
And you,
years for me in oil and gas, and the first time I ever saw perforating guns or wireline in action was off of your Twitter feed. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the
I'm sure,
man,
reality.
and I'm sure there's
that's
a bunch.
awesome.
I'm sure there's a bunch of people that could say that same exact thing.
What's what I like about being able to share content is, you're able to show people like, okay, the oil field isn't what you think it is. Like, especially people that don't know what it is. It's not just a hole in the ground and the oil comes out. Like, hey man, some companies, they frown upon it, putting a recorded video out there because they don't want it to be shown out there. It's like, but man, stuff like that, it's educational, like Collin talks about. Okay, we're not just drilling a hole in the ground and pumping a bunch of stuff and polluting this and that. It's like, okay, man, we're able to show we're protecting our ground tables. There's multiple sets of casing in the hole. It's not just one pipe, it's three pipes that are cemented in place. And then people are like, oh, we weren't aware that how environmentally conscious that oil and gas companies are, oil and gas operators, are starting to become.
Yeah, I mean, that's been
Great
one
point.
problem. I mean, this industry, it's no secret, it sucked at storytelling and actually contributing to changing the narrative. And they always have this like, oh no, we don't want to show videos of what we're doing on location. And we just can't play that game anymore. Like
Nope.
we have to be able to show the world what we do. Andy, I know that you've worked for some companies where the company men are, they may be lurkers on EFT.
Yeah.
And so, has there been like any, do you walk on location now and you're like a celebrity, or
Oh
do
man.
people follow you or know you?
So there's a company which I can't say who they are,
Yeah,
and their safety guy came out there. He was a wireline integrity safety guy, which means that was his main job, was just to go out there and cover all wireline companies that go out there and make sure that they're doing things by the book and especially by their rules and stuff. And I was in the truck, I was going down hole, and he's just behind me sitting there. I go, hey, what's going on, man? We're talking blah blah blah, shooting the shit. He looks at me, kind of squints his eyes. He's like, man, are you he's like, your name De La Rosa? I'm like, no, no. I mean, I'm not exaggerating at all, dude. And he's like, no, he's like, man, he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. He's like, you're Tejano Brown. And I didn't want to say anything. I just kept kind of like denying it. He's like, he went to his phone, started looking at his Twitter. I was like, yeah, I'm him.
No, that's you. That's you.
Yeah. So he goes, he's like, oh man, dude, you post good stuff, dude. He's like, I'm a follower, blah blah blah. He's an anon,
Yeah.
I asked him,
Oh yeah.
and he's like, man, you post really good stuff. And I was like, yeah, I really appreciate it. And like later on, I was like, but don't film out here. I was like, oh, I know, man, I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
Just
No, that's awesome though, man.
Yeah.
I mean, one, it's cool to see people engaging like that. I was out in Midland. I don't know, it was either earlier this year or last year, and I was at some I don't know, they're doing some event at the Horseshoe, and there was like Casey Donahue concert, and we went up there, and someone's like, hey, Frack Slap, and ended up being one of Andy's boys, one of his Wireline boys. He's like, I follow you on Twitter. And so the internet's pretty cool that one, it gives us a platform to show the world what energy is about, but then allows us to connect with people all over the industry. So that's cool
Yeah.
to hear that some safety guys, like, he recognized you. He's like, nah, you're definitely Tejano Brown. Can't lie to me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Both you guys deserve credit for that. Collin, I know you pushed me really hard to do this podcast originally. Well, tripping over the barrel, and now subsequently this one. And it's been huge for my brand. And I think the thing that is awesome about it, and both of you guys are aware of this, is there's a lot of people that are aware of you that you don't even know. Right? They may have anonymous accounts. They may be watching all of your Twitter or your LinkedIn stuff or listening to a podcast like this. And what happens is they start to build a personal connection with you. and with your brand. And then when they come up to you and see you at a conference or in the field or at a bar and they meet you, they feel like they already know you, right? When you're just like,
Yeah.
wait, hold on, who are you? Right. And it's kind of cool,
Yeah.
like mini celebrity within an industry that needs more personalities, frankly.
No, so it's got to be powerful for, Andy goes out on location and his work already speaks for itself, but then, a company man knows you or
Yeah.
engineers know you. Like that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Uh, Andy, tell us about your little tradition you got. So Jeremy, you'll appreciate this. One day I tweeted at Andy. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Write my name on a plug and send it down hole."
Yeah.
And so he writes "frag slap," and now all of a sudden that's like his thing is sending people down hole to frag. Andy, how many people's names do you think that you've written on guns now? I mean, it's got to be in the hundreds.
Oh yeah, dude. Most of my followers, and then just some people that, or not most of my followers, but most of the people that I follow, and then like a lot of my followers will DM me and stuff. That one trips me out, dude, because it's like you were talking about earlier. I live in my own little bubble, so Wireline to me is just like, it's Wireline, and it's just I'm just writing a name on a perforating gun. I'm like, okay, I mean, people they really like that. That one took off. I kind of see where they're coming from because it's like, hey man, you're kind of like part of the history of this well. You're
No, it's like, dude, I'm like, it's like, I mean, I know this isn't like technically or literally right, but it's like, yeah, my name's like cemented in that well now for for history,
Oh yeah.
So that's no, that's funny how that took off so much because yeah, I'd agree with you. It's like it's just writing names, but I think that's like one of the most. It's probably like one of the most creative things that I've seen from content creators of like getting people engaged with content because like some like no Instagram influencer can go do that and so what are you gonna write your name on? I don't know. Maybe some of these cheeks like, hey, I'll write your name on my butt cheeks or something. But
It's like something
Andy's
Chuck
over here.
would do.
Yeah, that is. Don't give him any ideas. I don't need to. I don't need to see that. But speaking of that, let's talk about. Did I see something that you're getting a Whataburger tattoo?
I'm gonna have to, man. I was thinking about the other day, and I was like, oh man, I freaking forgot about that bet. But and so I got one. I got an EFT tattoo on my right leg on the outside of it. And
yeah, what was the what was the bet or the wager for that one?
The EFT one?
Yeah.
I said if this gets 1,000 likes, which during that time like that was an unfathomable amount of likes for me, I will get a EFT tattoo. And so it got added on. Like I got like 3 in total. It was a roll call, which is Kenny Lay, EFT, which is the whole community, and then Landman Life, which is a guy that helped me come up within EFT too. Nice. Got 1,000. I forgot how many likes it got, dude, but it went well over 1,000. And sure enough, I read my word.
I retweeted it a few times to make sure that it got there. So
now, what pushed it over was definitely you, and for sure Kenny Lay, dude.
Yeah, the
Kenny Lay.
Andy likes throwing it in my face now that he commits to his bets and I don't. So
yeah, I gotta keep my word for
dude. You got to smoke that
he's
pound.
a man. He's a man of his word, and I'm not.
Oh man.
But no, getting things tattooed on you is that's definitely next level commitment. So
this is gonna be the last one for sure, dude.
You gotta be careful with this. And Whataburger is awesome. I don't know if people, like Mike Umbro did an In-N-Out video yesterday. Dude, In-N-Out is trash. I don't know if you guys
In-N-Out. Look, this isn't even biased for me just because I come from Texas. Like I legitimately try to enjoy In-N-Out. I'm just like, it's not good. Like it's not it's so mid that it's not even funny. Now, look, Whataburger. I think Whataburger is best when you're intoxicated.
Right.
2:00 in the morning. Those French fries hit different. So there's definitely some elements to that. But yeah, the whole Whataburger versus In-N-Out's not even.
It's not
a real debate.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not. And we got In-N-Out out here now too, right? Because Colorado's like the new California. So,
dude, we got one out in Katy. We got one in Houston.
Do you really?
Yeah.
And they just need to step away and let Whataburger have their territory.
I know.
I'm gonna take a picture because 90s texted me.
Bun B's got his new burger franchise, Trill Burger, and he's trying to take over. So we only support Trill Burgers from now.
Bun B,
Oh,
Houston legend, great rapper. So, Tejano, two things. Tejano, Andy, um, I want my Twitter that funk on a going down hole, and I want you to put a Star of David on it, right? So speaking of
yeah.
that, you have I'm Jewish. You have a Star of David tattoo on you. Talk about some of your like passion for religious theology, because we've gone back and forth a little bit and talked about that early on. But where did sort of your passion for learning different religions and the history of it come from?
Man, as like I told you earlier, I grew up Catholic for like 21 years, and I gave it up. I got into I just stuff I really don't ever really or I don't talk about, but I got into some trouble, some pretty bad trouble before I got into the wireline industry, and I tried to just keep away from that old lifestyle that I was living before.
Sure.
And I met a group of people, some local churches here in West Texas, and I just got real caught up with the Christian theology and everything, and I fell in love with the old law and the new law. And this is actually I always forget about this. Before I did Wireline, I wanted to be a youth minister, but that dream kind of escaped, and I became a heathen and got into the oil field.
now you're degenerate.
Oh man. No,
that's pretty funny, man.
Good for you, man. Well, I appreciate it, and it kind of blew me away. I'm like, here's a Latino dude in West Texas that works in the oil field, and you said something like "Happy Hanukkah," and you're like, "Yeah, here's my tattoo, Star at David." Oh shit!
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, because I know we got to run here in a second, is your kids. Like, your son is like a top ranked distance runner in the state of Texas right now, right?
Joey's crushing it,
dude. So in the district, my son and my daughter are number one.
What?
In the region, yeah, in our district, my son and my daughter are number one. In the region, my son is the 15th, which we have a huge region. It's West Texas. So I can say this without like, this is just fact. My son Joey, he's 16 now. He's the number one runner, long distance runner in Midland, Odessa. It doesn't matter what age group and all that. So I made a post about this the other day, and we're going to apply it to my daughter. We're doing a trial run right now. My brother, who started off coaching my son, he was a stud in the late 90s and the 2000s, and so was my uncle with running. So my brother was my son's and my daughter's, I guess, first coach. So he has a lot of connections with pro athletes, pro runners, people that actually run in the Olympics. Shout out Bryce Hoppel, Midland, Texas.
Nice.
My son is going to have a professional coach now guiding him, and we're about to have our 2023 track season. And man, we're just really hoping for the best, man. Like me and his mom are like super like focused when it comes to that. It's blown us away big time. Like just the stuff that he does. Like he holds the record for the fastest mile at SJ. He holds the record for the fastest 5K at Elite Freshman, and just to be able to like the times I've seen he's running like this. His PR for the 5K this past season was a 15:43, and he ran that at 15 years old, dude. I mean, this is like holy crap.
Crazy.
Man.
What's his mile time?
Are you fast?
No, I'm fat.
I just gotta subtract. I just gotta subtract the letter. Huh? so you're it sounded like your dad and your brother are fast and runners, and the kids got genes from your side of the family.
Yeah, I ran, but I didn't take it serious. It's just, man, I don't know. It's just we knew he was gonna be good in 7th grade right before COVID hit, but then he trained his whole entire offseason, COVID, sacrificed summer, and then he's just killing it at his races, man. And then my daughter came out of nowhere, man. She just like ran it like, okay, well, I guess I'll start running. And, like the past 2 years, they've both gotten, I think she got, I have it right here. Oh, this is just knocked something over. So this is year number 2 for her of runner of the year. And then it's year number 2 for my son of like MVP. And then last year, my son was the only one from Midland, Texas to make it to to regionals. I mean, just to be able to, he didn't win anything, but just to be able to do that at the age he was at, I mean, that's incredible, man. Like the only people that are beating him are kids that this is their last year, they're seniors. Yep. They already have scholarships that they've already signed and all that stuff. That's the only people that are beating him. Kids that are going to freaking college to go run over there and stuff. Yeah. Like that. Well, this is barely his sophomore year, and they've been on varsity. So my daughter's a freshman; she's on varsity. My son's, he's been on varsity since he was a freshman and stuff like that.
That's
That's
amazing.
crazy.
What's
Y'all are a family of runners. The kids running track, and Andy's running wireline. You
Yeah,
missed
man, I knew that was coming.
it.
Well, thank you. Tejano Brown is the Twitter feed, TeJanoBrown. You got Frack Slap over here. That funk, and I'm going to put this out on LinkedIn and Twitter. Andy, thank you so much for coming in, for schooling us on Wireline, Whataburger, and all the other fun things that are passionate in your life. But I appreciate you coming on, my man. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you having me on, man. Appreciate you too, Colin.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.